Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Over the weekend, as we ended the second week of protest for the murder of George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, a 27-year-old man, was shot and killed by the police in a Wendy's parking lot. And when I take a critical examination of this killing of Rayshard Brooks, I can't really call it a murder based on what I saw in the police video. And what I saw in the police video, for up to a certain point, were law enforcement officers trying to do their job until Rayshard Brooks escalated things towards the end of the encounter. Because when I take a critical examination of this incident, I can see how your Rayshard Brooks partially contributed to his own demise, and that, I believe, really started even before he entered that Wendy's parking lot, because it's clear to me that your Rayshard Brooks did not really understand the unwritten social rules for black men and alcohol. And if he had understood those unwritten social rules for black men and alcohol, I believe it would have really helped him at the end of the day. Now, many black men don't understand the unwritten social rules for black men and alcohol because their fathers didn't really teach them that a black man really needs to be aware of his surroundings, aware of his environment when he's out on the street, because there's a target on his back and he doesn't want to do anything to increase that target and make it closer in the scope of either a race soldier or one of these beta male wannabe superheroes out here. And doing things like drinking leads to you making that target wider on your back, because when your inhibitions are lowered by alcohol, you wind up making decisions that could possibly put your life at risk. And that's why many smart black men, they will go out here, and if they have a drink, they will be at home, and they will not even think about leaving that home until they have slept off that alcohol, because they know if they go out here and they're behind the wheel of a vehicle or even walking down the street, they could possibly be the target of the police and wind up either getting arrested for drunken disorderly or get arrested for a DUI. So black men who are smart, they do their drinking at home. They try to avoid bars, and if they do go to bars, they may only get one drink, and they make sure that they have a cab waiting for them so that they have, one, they're in the cab, and then two, they have an alibi to ensure that if they are run into some sort of encounter with the police, at least they have a cab driver there and some video to say where they are. So they're always trying to cover themselves, because when you go out here and you're drinking and you get behind the wheel, again, you put yourself at risk for winding up in a situation where you may possibly be charged with a DUI. Now, from the video, your Rayshard Brooks says that he was drinking because his mother had recently passed away about a year and a half ago, when he was still grieving his mother. And he talked about going to celebrate his daughter's birthday, and he had talked about taking them to Burger King. So I believe that your Rayshard Brooks was still dealing with the loss of his mother, which is a very, very hard thing to deal with. Some people don't really recover from grieving for a year to year and a half. It can take a long time for especially young brothers who are very close to their mothers to recover from grieving, and some people never really recover because you will love your mother. And Rayshard Brooks, I think he was trying to deal with that. Now, he says he had one drink, but from the way he was behaving, I think he had quite a few more than one drink. And the reason why I say that is because your Rayshard Brooks, when he was in that parking lot, what they don't really tell you is that this man was driving in the parking lot. He fell asleep behind the wheel in the drive-thru, and he was asleep for a good, I'd say, about 20-25 minutes before the police got there, because it usually takes some time to get there. And it took over 20 minutes to try to awake Rayshard Brooks out of the drunken stupor he was in. I mean, they had knocked on the glass of his car, they had knocked on the door, they opened the door, which shows me that he really was not in, he was really drunk, because usually most people lock the doors of their car when they're driving, and that really shows me, again, how deeply under the influence your Rayshard Brooks was. And when the police officer opened the door, that was really, again, a red flag to me, because, again, most people lock their car doors when they're driving, and again, after that, they drive over to another part of the parking lot. They ask him some questions, and again, it took 20 minutes to wake him up, and you're asking him questions. It's looking like he's being civil in this incident. It really looks like he's being very civil and complying to what the officers are asking him. They ask him if he will take a field sobriety test. He says yes to this. He follows all of the instructions for the sobriety test. And then he goes and they ask him to take a breathalyzer test. And he is a little argumentative at that point, but then eventually agrees to take the sobriety test. And after taking the sobriety test, we find out his blood alcohol level is somewhere in the medium range, and that's when the officers decide to detain your Rayshard Brooks. And it looks like he's going to go along with them, and then all of a sudden we see him just start to try to fight him. And when I looked at that part of the tape, I believe that's when reality set in for your Rayshard Brooks. And when reality set in for Rayshard Brooks, that's when he freaked out and just got emotional. Because with a lot of guys, they'll be drunk, and then when they have to think about the prospect of getting arrested, this is what freaks them out. And then they panic, and your Rayshard Brooks panicked and decided to run. And it was that running, I believe, was the thing that led to the escalation that cost him his life. Because in that escalation where he tried to bolt, he then tried to fight the police officers, which was already compounding things, turning it from a DUI to resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. And then they tased him, and it didn't really faze him the first taser. He snatched the other taser from the officer, and then he tried to run. And that's where I started to see the issue as related to your excessive force, because your Rayshard Brooks, really, he was inebriated. There was no need to take out a pistol and shoot your Rayshard Brooks 3 times, because this is Georgia, there was no real place your Rayshard Brooks was going to go, and all they had to do was go on a chase and just tackle him, and they probably would have got him, because when he was so drunk, he was not really in any condition to do anything. I mean, he wasn't in any condition, plus there wasn't that much stuff out there in that part of Georgia, because I remember going to North Carolina for my father's funeral, and there's not much out there. I mean, if you have to have a car to go to these areas, and I looked at it and I said, this is they really did not need to take out a pistol and shoot him. And that really, again, shows me that there was excessive force, but I don't believe it was a murder like the case of George Floyd. I believe that this was a manslaughter at the most, because, again, Rayshard Brooks did have a part in his own demise based on what was presented in the video. Because had he just gone along with the officers, he would have just gotten a DUI, a ticket, and possibly just been sent on his way. But he escalated things partially, and that escalation, again, led to things going this way. But the whole thing is, the officers, maybe they shouldn't have taken out a gun to deal with him, because what I've seen on episodes of Cops with guys who bolt like this, they usually just give chase, and then they just tackle the guy, and that's the end of the situation. That's where we get this gray area as related to Rayshard Brooks and his killing, as I see it, because Rayshard Brooks, he was all right until he got emotional and started to panic about getting arrested. And that's, again, I believe the gravity of the situation hit Rayshard Brooks about where he was going to be for the weekend. He got scared because when it comes down to black men and you're trying to do right and stuff, trying to take care of your family and stuff, you being in jail is very scary because when you're a black man, you have so much to lose. And I guess he saw he had so much to lose because once you get a record, everything is practically gone. So I believe that's the thing that really scared him and led to him fleeing. But again, I believe that he didn't get those lessons as related to these unwritten social rules as related to drinking. And I think he didn't get those unwritten social rules as related to police. And again, a lot of these young brothers out here, they're not getting taught these unwritten social rules. And because they're not getting taught these unwritten social rules, this is costing a lot of young black men their lives. Because if these young black men were taught these unwritten social rules, I believe it could save a lot of lives out here because they wouldn't get into situations like this, like Rayshard Brooks, again, going out drinking and not understanding that if you've had too much to drink, you should, even your own family and people should let you go somewhere and sleep it off, because you sleeping it off in a home or somebody's place may save your life. And that's something black people had to do back in the day. They had to say, look, I'm going to let him stay in the back and let him sleep that off, because if he goes out here, he's going to get targeted by these police or people who will call these police on him, or he's going to get in a fight with somebody, and that may lead to him losing his life. And again, this is a very gray situation, because when it came down to Rayshard Brooks being in that vehicle, it could have been dangerous either way, because your Rayshard Brooks, while he was killed by the police, if he was allowed to remain on the road, he may have possibly led to the death of somebody else, because that car was just as deadly a loaded weapon as that police officer's gun. Because when you have a guy who is driving drunk, there is the possibility that he may get in an accident where he may harm others or he may harm himself. So that's the scary part about Rayshard Brooks. And that's the part that people really are not connecting the dots on as related to his passing. Like your Black Lives Matter and many of the protesters, they are still caught up in the emotional frenzy regarding the murder of George Floyd. And they're trying to say that this is just like the murder of George Floyd. Now, when I look at the video of George Floyd, it's a clear murder, because this man's knee, Derek Chapin, was on this man's neck for 8 minutes, and there were 3 other officers there who went out and could have done something, but did absolutely nothing. And that's the big difference between George Floyd and Rayshard Brooks. You had officers who could have done something, but did nothing. Now, these 2 officers, they could have acted differently, but there was it was a very, they didn't need to use that excessive force towards the end. They could have just chased him down, because this was a parking lot. There was nothing else out there, and this was something they could have done to really save this man's life. But this officer decided to take out this gun, and he reacted instead of responding. And when you're an officer, I can understand the heat of the moment and stuff like that, but you have to watch how you do things, because, again, seasoned officers know that when you have a DUI guy, he's unarmed, there's no need to take out a weapon and escalate things even further. I mean, he had a taser in his hands, but a taser only has about 1 charge, and he really wouldn't be able to get that much distance. So I look at it as they didn't need to take out a weapon, because there wasn't much he was going to do, just call for backup, and you would have had him, because a drunk guy is not really going to do that much. But I look at the protest, and again, the protesters are primarily going on emotion, and that emotion over Rayshard Brooks, I think that is something that is done because people are looking at it and saying, we've had George Floyd, now we have Rayshard Brooks, and on another part, we're seeing how Black Lives Matter and their campaign have absolutely failed black men once again because they went out here marching and protesting, escalating things even more, and as they escalated things, it led to the burning of that Wendy's restaurant. And I have a critical question about that. How is destroying this restaurant and these franchise owners' business going to get justice for Rayshard Brooks? And this is something people need to ask the question about because we had people out here going out here and destroyed the Wendy's, which had absolutely nothing to do with Rayshard Brooks's decisions to go out here and get drunk, drive into that drive-through. This restaurant had nothing to do with what Rayshard Brooks did. Rayshard Brooks made these decisions, and this is the other thing that's really troubling to me is that people, yes, the George Floyd murder was egregious, but we also have to hold black males responsible when they participate in irresponsible behavior. And again, I see where Rayshard Brooks' own actions partially led to his own demise, but I also see where these police officers did use excessive force, and I also see the disingenuousness of the Atlanta Police Department, where we had the chief, I think, quit, and then we had this officer fired, and as I see it, this was just them trying to cover their rear ends, but not really looking to get justice for black men. And when I look at this case, I see, again, more importantly, what we need as black men. We really need to get in front of our own issues and start speaking on our own issues. This is something black men really need to do because your Black Lives Matter, all they know how to do is march and protest and make a lot of noise, but not really work on an agenda to help these young black men like Rayshard Brooks learn things like the unwritten social rules for black manhood and black masculinity, the codes for how you're supposed to behave when you're outside, and learn how to try to not be in a certain place so that you can minimize that target on your back, and also learn things like watching yourself out here. These are things that he didn't get, and because he didn't get them, he wound up in a situation where his life was put at risk, and that was, again, something people don't want to talk about. Now, this isn't, again, like George Floyd, where they alleged he had the counterfeit 20 and they called the police on him. This was, as I saw it, in some ways, a legitimate call because here's a man who is drunk inside of a drive-through and he's asleep at the wheel and he's inebriated. And this is one of those situations where do we give the black man a pass and let him use this car as a loaded weapon and cost somebody their life down the road? Or do we hold this black man accountable in some way partially for being in that vehicle and possibly putting people's life at risk and trying to find a way to avoid him harming others? That's a very tough situation. But in the case of your Black Lives Matter, they want to say we give the black man a pass and have him go out here and still be in this car inebriated. And I can't really justify that and say that this incident is similar to George Floyd, which, again, is a clear case of injustice. This case, it's a gray area, and it's a gray area because it's one where I believe that both sides did wrong. The officer used excessive force, as I see it, the one who was fired, and I see also where your Rayshard Brooks has to have some accountability because your Rayshard Brooks partially is responsible for his situation because he made the decision to drink, he made the decision to drive, and everybody is so caught in their emotions regarding what happened to George Floyd, that they're not thinking objectively about this Rayshard Brooks case. And again, when I look at the Rayshard Brooks case, it just shows me how much Black Lives Matter has failed black men, and it also shows me how they exploit the murders of black men in order to push their own personal political agenda, because it seems they only come out when black men are murdered, and they don't have a mission for helping young black men. And as I see it, we really need to take control over our own mission. We need to take control over our own issues, and we need to take control over our own agenda and establish an agenda for helping black men, because black lives, as I see it, don't matter to Black Lives Matter. Black men's lives don't matter. All they want to do is use the lives of black men to enrich themselves at our expense, and they don't do anything to help black men stay alive. And that's something, I see it, we need to do for ourselves. We need to take the lead in our own life, and we need to take the lead in finding solutions for helping black men, because this is our issue, these encounters with police, and we as black men need to start doing more to help ourselves, like teaching these unwritten social rules to these young brothers so that they will not wind up in dangerous situations that put their lives at risk. If you'd like to pick up some of my positive African American fiction or some of my men's issues nonfiction, you can pick those up on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it on Google Play, Smashwords, and the iBookstore. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available on Google Play, Smashwords, and the iBookstore. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. A man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Google Play, Smashwords,